I actually have submitted my proposal to the faculty, but I have to make some slight changes because I've talked to the university in Cirebon regarding the number of classes. So I will tell you some of those slight changes as I go. Thank you very much. And everyone, this is the title of my work, Supporting Student Agency in Academic Writing in Undergraduate English Language Teacher Education Programs in Indonesia. The reason why I focus on agency is because this is very fundamental and it's missing from our pedagogical practices in Indonesia. And then why in English language teacher education programs in Indonesia, at the moment, everybody, we have actually, what is it? Sorry? We have actually some new regulations from the government regarding these two things, the purpose of academic courses and the teaching of academic courses, and the purpose and the teaching of academic writing. So my key concern in my work here is to make a more feasible links between the blue columns with the yellow columns. And I think you're already familiar with the purpose of academic courses, which states the graduate competence. They always say it's about critical, creative investigators, and the teaching is to facilitate this. While the purpose, the teaching of academic writing addresses some notions about academic writing, where students can communicate and further their inquiry process and results. Since 1998, Indonesian government has already started the higher education reform, and these are the latest, everyone. In 2012, we have the Indonesian qualification framework. Our government wants to have highly competitive universities in the South Asia region and also in Asia, and of course around the globe. And then we also have previously this new national standards of higher education, which was released and perfected in 2015, in which research and academic writing becomes two key developmental areas. And then those new policies actually require the graduate to have the higher order thinking skills that reflect students' capacity to engage in a reflective inquiry and communicate its outcomes early and through publications. It's a very big job for Indonesia at the moment. And the emphasis of academic writing skills in undergraduate degree is a direct outcome of these new developments. So I'm trying to build those links here. And I have tried to address these issues, everyone, in my work. According to Al-Wasila, 5 years ago, there is a low level of scholarly publications in Indonesia in all disciplines areas. And the same is the case with publications in English and English language teacher education program. So Al-Wasila urged our government and universities across the archipelago in Nusantara to expand students' literacy skills, including their academic writing abilities. Expanding the practices means probably we have to break away from the current paradigm that we have at the moment. So the problem that I identified here is that due to low English proficiency levels of the newly graduated English teachers, the increasing publications in English will present numerous challenges. And in the next slide, I identified the problems in more detail, 4 problems here. Low qualifications of English teachers in schools. The results of graduates will trigger the graduates with low proficiency. Around 4 years ago, we have the statistic like this, in which 58% of English teachers in the middle and primary school teachers in Jakarta, West Java, and Banten province. Those are the most important economic bases in Indonesia. And Banten province have no formal qualifications as English teachers, while in the middle schools, only 4.2% of teachers hold master's degree, and 90.75% hold an undergraduate degree. And then in the national level, in 2012, Awasala and Hamid mentioned that 35% of English teachers in the national level are sufficiently to teach English. So I think that's the main reason why ELTE reform in Indonesia is one of the key priorities after 1998 economic crisis, after Suharto, President Suharto no longer president. And the second issue is about the old teaching method. And the need for ELTE reform was supported by several Indonesian scholars like Awasala and Jubhari, Gustin, where they actually urge us all to break away from the preoccupation of linguistic paradigm, grammar, drills, and I think we need to make a shift forward. Yeah, and with the emphasis of higher order thinking skills, such as thinking or the ability to argue in a scholarly way. That is the new spirit, I guess. And then the third problem is that investigative scholars are needed to design and implement investigative curricula. And Yusuf calls for greater engagement by Indonesian scholars in their professional research. And number 4 is low-level requirements that are implemented in English language teacher education programs. These low-level requirements from the university, from the faculty and the department actually result in low thinking skills with a narrow set of arguments, and then the arguments are already challenged, and finally, they only use literature that probably confirm what they already know or believe. So I think with those 4 issues addressed, pursuit of novelty in relation to the higher education is in need. And my study will address this aim. So I'm trying to approach academic writing in a way that supports inquiry skills, where writing is an integral part, not a combination, because what is currently happening is that we see writing as the end product, but nobody knows what is actually going on in the writing process, especially in the academic writing. And then my proposed work also tries to shift away from the linguistic paradigms, which is very dominant, especially systemic functional linguistics. And then that becomes the current culture of the pedagogy of academic writing in Indonesia. Many people there tend to think that text language is merely the product of linguistics. And I think we have to see other organizing principles of the organizing systems, not merely linguistics, right? And then I'm trying to focus on the process of learning itself. How do actually people learn? When we merely focus on the linguistic system, we are aware of the system, but what can we do with the system? Which is complex, I guess. And the study will also investigate the impact of innovative pedagogic tools. I have 3 pedagogic tools, which I will explain later. Constructing on the basis of empirical evidence on the process of learning and language learning, and implemented to support students' engagement in a reflective inquiry and communicate its outcomes in writing. And with those issues addressed and the study aims, perhaps I have some proposed solutions to those problems. Number 1, maybe technology can be a big help for teachers with no qualifications. That what has been mentioned by he, I don't know. Maybe he, Sangarun, 2015, a latest study from China.
It's a Chinese name. Never the Chinese here.
And perhaps technology can also be a big help once again when we are preoccupied with the old teaching methods. And then to promote investigative scholars, maybe the pedagogue like us can design and implement some investigative curricula like what Ania has done here with the isolate-like models. And 4, low-level requirements that are being placed on students. Maybe isolate model can also challenge students to explore, discuss, systemize, and evaluate. Here I quote Ania Lyon and Pertiwi. What could go wrong? When faced with challenges, undergraduate students will explore the internet for new insights on different ways of looking at problems. They will engage their high-order thinking skills in order to make sense of this information, solve problems that this task creates, engage in teams to help each other develop independent ideas, begin to think creatively, communicate solutions, and then finally, if only because of lack time, it may be that addressing the international curriculum standards is not as difficult as it seems if academic staff enables students to examine problems. This is the most interesting part. We probably never actually let our students to examine their own problems and let them to solve their problems. But what we did, what I did perhaps, yeah, this reflective experience, was simply giving them textbook solutions that encourage intellectual compliance rather than innovative thinking. Very interesting quote. And then here in the literature review, I tried to give reorientation on how literacy should look like in a globalized context of higher education. So the role of literacy is actually this one from Kuyuliu's paper, everybody. Students' personal transformation, it's how we expand our perception about ourselves. And then students' social transformation is about how we see ourselves in relation to the world. These refer to the processes provided to assist students in their ongoing construction and reconstruction of their identities, which is, the meaning-making systems that inform their actions. And I believe this probably is the best I can frame how I see literacy at the moment. And then, according to CoC, what is missing in this transformation thing is the keyword called agency. When people are talking about student-centeredness, I'm not quite sure whether they actually address the idea of the agency. So when students are taught literacy as a closed system of forms and structures, linguistics, grammar, it is actually the system that they study, and of course it is different. When you actually study yourself and then you utilize the structures of the system for personal and social transformation, that will be different. I think it will be a problem if we use the system, but then it does not allow us to transform ourselves. So maybe one of the answers that I can give is that maybe we need teaching models that does not teach a system at all. Maybe the system is good, but it does not capture all because life is such a huge, complex world, and language. We are linguistic being, but at the same time we are also biological being. We are also psychological being, and so on and so on. So maybe we need an alternative. Maybe not to teach the system, instead of doing what? And the empirical evidence from neuroscience, psychology, perception studies, and play says that mammals and humans are wired for exploration and play. It triggers a question, do we still need a teacher at all? Maybe yes, maybe no. Because in He and Sanguran, one of the most interesting things mentioned there is that, do we need still a teacher or no? Our ideas lacking one-to-one correspondence with the world they represent instead serve primarily pragmatic purposes. If our goal-directed actions fail, the world confronts us with the evidence of our insufficiency. Pragmatic failure means that there is more the thing in itself than originally suspecting. The unmet portion of the thing may pose a threat, but may also offer possibility for the expansion of competence. Exploration generates the information from which new possibilities are born. That's what Jordan Peterson said in one of his works. And then here are probably the principles, everyone, of exploratory model that I will apply in my class. I'll address those things, and it has some implications on the pedagogy, like learning needs to be embedded in the world of the student, not in the world of the teachers, because we never know what is actually happening in the student's head. And we cannot simply inject knowledge into students' head. Learning requires access to resources that allow students to confront, which is to communicative explanatory power of their assumptions. And finally, learning needs to be supported with resources and tools enabling students to confronting, contrasting, comparing their assumptions and their value to the pragmatic purposes that they pursue. In neuroscience, meaning making mechanisms means making comparison, contrast all the time, again and again. And then this is the example from Anya's work. Exploratory resource-based model for learning. It's actually for reading. So the examples of text here is analyzed to the impact that the structures evoke in the reader. So this is non-linguistic based, everyone. And then each text has actually 6 generic levels, if you want to call it generic levels, like setting the focus, disturbance, dialogue, development, resolution, morale, which I think is more dynamic compared to the existing generic structure developed by the genre-based pedagogy. And then here, I attach the keyword, key phrase, emotions is the highest organizing element of text because text is basically an emotional construct, not merely linguistic construct. And emotion is actually the desire, the will, the intention, which is served by intellect. So it's a very new thing, but it really does make sense for me when Anya addresses these ideas. And this is also another example of exploratory model for learning. Is an international graph taken from aesthetics. Now, international graphs use as a technique, everyone, to represent students' writing. And it has been informed by verbotonalism and neuroscience and aesthetics. And the purpose of this international graph is to examine a possible relationship between rhythmic and the neurological theory of aesthetic experience. There are more and more current studies that says there are more connection between intonation and grammar and other linguistic elements. If we play with the rhythm of the language, then other elements will be good as well. So the function of these international graphs as an instrument is actually to identify how students organize in their text in time. So it's about meaning and time relationships. That's very human. I think we always think of the proper time to say something to another person, right? So the neuroscience provides us with this empirical evidence that time and meaning is connected. And we can do the same thing in the text organization. And in Anya's research, the participants recorded their own academic texts, and the pitch of the recorded speech was analyzed using proud or wind pitch, so they can actually hear their own sounds from their own writing. And the focus of analysis, not limited to these questions, what are the events in the text that created, when and how to locate an anticipation and presence and stress? Because that's how meaning is actually constructed in the perspective of aesthetics. And in this slide, I put some critics on the existing literature, everyone, on the current literature. For example, Emilia, the genre-based theories in Indonesia, use description text, was oriented to teach students what lecture was thought to be relevant, not students. Did not use independent raters to examine the quality of students. So in the first study, the researcher did not address procedural and representational memories, just like what Ph.D. and others said. In my work, I'm going to include those two memories, how we incorporate the procedural and representational memories. Well, it's not enough to remember names, but also maybe we can do something very good without clearly knowing that we can do it. So just like riding the bicycle or driving a car. In G1 no, for example, again, linguistic description is the sole focus of the study, which means that they did not address the multisensory experience of the students. It's always about linguistic process, text as a linguistic process. And we don't know, for example, I mentioned here that from the textbook analysis, learning is about organization. Simply using the templates that these are the genre that the students need to provide. Let's do it. So, and then he does not mention about the reorganization. Learning is actually reorganization, right? In Sukandi, well, the survey has what is it? Does not actually have a clear framework because after 12 weeks of teaching, he collected opinions, blah blah blah, but the essence of the questions were not actually addressed.
Laura, can I interrupt you, please?
Yes.
Could you move on to methodology now?
Okay,
because
sure.
it's very little time left.
Okay, so the student agency is missing everyone from the current literature. And then, so to address this
Just
one?
methodology.
No. All right. These are the research questions, and
You can read us the research questions, please.
okay, so I have 5 research questions. Number 1, how do undergraduate students and teachers in ELT programs work with the academic writing tools that support exploratory learning described by Q, Lion, and Lion, in contradistinction to traditional models that rely on prescriptive models of teaching? Number 2, are there any significant improvements in writing performances between the experimental and the control groups, because it's quasi-experiments? If so, how do these improvements manifest themselves? Number 3, are there any significant differences in writing performances between the experimental and control groups? If so, how do these differences manifest themselves? Number 4, what are the students' perceptions of the tools used in the present study to support academic writing? And number 5, what are the teachers' perceptions of the tools used in the present study to support academic writing? And everyone, since this is a mixed method study, so I use non-randomized control and experimental group. So dear examiners, these are the first change that I made because of the information I received from the university. So in Cirebon, we have 4 classes, and then usually the first 2 classes are for higher achievers and middle achievers, while the third and the fourth groups of students belong to low achievers and underachievers. So they usually call it class A, B, C, and D. And in my research, the experimental groups here, so I will address the low achiever and underachiever, not the high achiever, because in other studies as well, they use the lower achievers and underachievers as the experimental group. And I have pre-tests to determine where each group is, and I also have pre-tests to determine how much they have improved and how much they improve in relation to each other. So I will employ both qualitative and quantitative data in my study. The research tools I'm going to use verbal tonalism, aesthetics, and intonation, everyone, to support number 1, multisensory learning experiences, and then number 2 is all about the learning as the reorganization, and number 3 as a self-evaluation and self-regulation. And technology can be used to enhance agency, and the research tools I mentioned here is about verbal tonalism, aesthetics, and emotion. And what I'm trying to do here is to create a learning conditions where students have access that can enable them to attend to their personal needs. And number 2, access or paths to foster multisensory processes. And number 3, space to generate ideas how best to support students' learning to ensure quality and inform evidence-based foundation. And I will teach your third year students in undergraduate ELT program in Indonesia as assessed by international experts in academic writing. So I'm going to use or employ raters to have a kind of independence. So I'm not the only one who will assess the score. The essays I mean. So 3-in-1 tools here, everyone, will be used together to foster learners' agency. That is to enable learners to utilize various learning resources to self-evaluate, self-regulate, compare, and contrast as the key components in meaning-making practice as the foundational concept of learning. And then this is the data collection. I have pre-tests and post-tests. I will also use online questionnaires to students and lecturers, semi-structured interviews after the end of the class, and raters' comments will be used as a qualitative data. While all the scores from the pre-tests and post-tests will be seen as quantitative data. I will use SPSS with the level of significance 0.05, and then intra-rater reliability following other studies in China and Thailand. It's simply the degree of agreement among repeated administrations of diagnostic tests performed by a single rater. They are humans as well, so maybe they got bored, they got fatigued, so we have to make sure that every time they assess, they are doing it well. IOC, item objective coverage, will also be used to establish the content validity of the questionnaire. And at the end of those data collections, I will frame my findings with these 3 questions. What does study of academic writing involve actually in Indonesian context? And B, what experiences need to be provided to address the aspects of identified in A? Why experiences should be highlighted? Because every time we have new experiences, our neurological processes are also changing, our brain is also changing. Right? And what conditions need to be put in place for these experiences to be provided to address the aspects identified in A? And finally, it's about the ethics. My work will involve the participants of adults, no animals included. All ethical processes will be followed by ensuring anonymity of the participants in the data collection and all data reporting processes, of course. I will have the permission from the university, consent form. I will explain the risk, the opportunity to withdraw at any time if they feel threatened, bored, or because of any other reasons. There are no anticipated risks to participants as a result of participation in this project. And then the second slight change I made is about the timeline, because academic writing class is almost done this semester, so I have to go back to Indonesia in August or December next year. While from January to March, I will complete chapters 1, 2, and 3. While completing the ethics clearance until mid-February, I guess. So I have 6 to 7 months to prepare all the teaching materials and all the databases, all the technology-based materials for the students. Data analysis should be completed in January and June 2019, and in July and December I might have revisions. Hopefully I'll submit the paper in January 2020, probably after the New Year's Eve, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lalan. We have time for questions, so we invite the floor.
Yes, Hannah, please.
Congratulations. Just a quick question. You mentioned about having independent assessors.
Yes.
Academic assessors. How will you go about recruiting them, or have you already got them lined up? And is it also like, will they, oh yeah, sorry, go on. Where will you get them from?
All right, so from the conversations I had with the supervisors, they already had all the contacts. I'm going to have 5 independent raters. For me, it's very crucial for my next study design, because yes, I want those people see objectively how my students actually wrote in the 2 different types of tests. Perhaps we can have some raters from here or from America, from US, from other parts of the globe.
Okay,
Yes.
so primarily